Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, and this is your 3-6 NBA first round playoff series best bets and series preview. We will give you best bets on how to bet these series before the series starts. We'll talk about how we want to bet them during the series. We'll give you the full cap on them. We'll break down all of the analysis, and to do that, I've got Brandon Anderson with me. He's at Wheaton Brando, WheatonBrando in the Action Network app and on Twitter. Want to let you know, by the way, you want to download the Action Network app. Our new props tool is killer, and you're going to want that for the playoffs. You're going to want to check that out. Also, it's really great. If you sign up for the Pro Tools, you're going to get to see stuff like we've talked about this all week on the play-in tournament games, see where the money's coming in, how these things are shifting. You're going to see like a lot of really interesting movement in the game one lines for this various series between when you hear this episode and Saturday when games start tipping off, or Sunday, depending on the game. It's going to be I think it's going to be fascinating to watch those lines move. We've already seen interesting movement on some of these series markets. You can track those. You can also track all of your futures bets, your series bets in the app as well. You can follow along with Brandon's as well. I put in a bet that Brandon's going to just fucking hate on conference finals MVP yesterday. I put in Luka parlayed with Jaylen Brown, and that...
Oh, boy.
And that was a solid 50-1. So I also have Tatum and Luka, but we will, if you want to listen, by the way, speaking of Luka Doncic, we did 4-5s yesterday. You can find that in the feed. You will find, I think before this game, you'll find Wednesdays before this podcast pops. I don't really know when these are going up, to be honest with you. That's David Payne's job to figure out when to put all of our nonsense. But we will have play-in tournament best bets for Wednesday with Sean Little and Brian Fonseca breaking down Heat Moneyline. And then later in the week, we're going to have a bunch of more episodes. We will do the 2-7s. We're also going to have a Game 1's mega pod where I'm going to rip through all of the Game 1 best bets with our crew. So as many folks as I could track down from the Buckets cadre of contributors, I'm going to get those folks in there to give Game 1 best bets. I am going to endeavor also to get us a series best bets that's just going to be like rapid fire. Here's my best bet for a series bet. Here's my best bet for a series bet, all the way down the line. Jay Money's like, oh yeah, I've got series best bets, which I was very surprised at. So Jay Money's going to be on that, as well as all the rest of the crew. Make sure to check that out in this feed. Go to youtube.com/the Action Network. A couple more shows for you. On Wednesday, we're going to have Action Island, where I will be wearing a ridiculous outfit because it's island themed. I have so much nonsense I've gotten for this. My daughter, I put all of it on yesterday, and my daughter giggled like for a solid 30 minutes. That's a great show. We're going to have another Nothing But Bet later this week on Saturday before the tip-off of the first games. So I just can't recommend. I personally am killing myself. The rest of the crew is killing themselves. We're doing lots of content for you guys to have as much information as possible to bet these games. One more note before we do these series previews. In the Action Network app and on actionnetwork.com, you're going to want to check out the story from Chase Howell and our guy, Matt Ribotowski. They did an in-depth story reporting on the Jonte Porter situation and on activity that he had while he was in the G League prior to signing with the Raptors with a FanDuel VIP account. He did not bet on NBA games or college basketball games, but it does give you some interesting context about how much money exactly Porter was betting prior to signing with the Raptors. You're going to want to check that story out. It's a very big deal. All right, Brandon, 3-6 time. And this is going to be, I think, a very interesting episode from a number of perspectives. We have, I don't think we're on opposite sides today. We're not going to have a lot of like debate here, but the one that in particular we're not going to have almost any debate on. And this is the one that the more I've looked at it, I'm just like, I feel more and more and more confident in, which just scares the poop out of me. I am so terrified of how confident we are in this series. Let's start with Bucks Pacers. What's your series best bet?
Yeah, I was lamenting on Sunday as we watched. I lamented my Cavs division leader bets. I lamented my Timberwolves division leader bets. Died on the vine. We'll get to the Timberwolves. And then right in the middle of all of that, suddenly as the playoff picture, all the tiebreakers, all of the work you've done, tracking all the head-to-heads and everything all season, and all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. I texted you. we're getting Bucks Pacers, aren't we? Okay, let's go, baby. So ran to bet this one at the open. It gave us a plus 230 Pacers opener. Give me the Pacers at any plus number. Hope you can still find one because, man, has it moved in a hurry. And give me the full Pacers escalator. Minus 1.5 games plus 230. Minus 2.5 games plus 475. And nibble that sweet, baby. 11-1. All in Pacers. This is the series that you and I are most confident in this round. What could possibly go wrong?
What could go wrong? This is definitely the 2024 first round what could go wrong series. I'm going to keep it simple because I'm not I think the variance is here on the series as it is with most series. I am going to keep it simple, and mine's just Pacers plus 100 at BetMGM right now. If you can find it, here's a good question. Let's start here because I do think this is a good number to start at. Brandon mentioned it. This is plus 230. I don't like talking about numbers that we got that are gone. I think it's just braggadocio, right? Like that's not useful for you as a listener if you haven't bet the series yet. We talked about it on Buckets Live where I was like, oh, and then it was like already moving. What's a number that you don't think people should bet the pace is like? Here's one. Is there a number that this will get to that you think people should not bet the Pacers at?
Yeah, I mean, I said any plus number, so I think that's basically my bearing on this. So I think we're basically around that range at this point. Where the hard part for me is like I don't think that it's not useful to say, well, we got it at plus 230 because you and I both gave it out on Twitter. You gave it out on the live show. Like people should be following us, seeing our bets. These lines are going to move, so it's not useful at this moment on this podcast, but this stuff moves. Like I wish that we'd been able to record this a day or two ago and we would have been able to get out a plus 170 or a plus 140 as it like slowly slid down. But this is the game. The lines move fast. So yeah, to me, my hard part is, well, if I already got it at a better price, how can I justify giving it out at a worse price? Well, because it still is a good bet right now. This still the full escalator are good bets right now. They're not as valuable tickets as they were when you could have got it at a better price, but that doesn't make them not valuable tickets still. So I think that we have neared, we may have reached the threshold where it may not be a go much further here. And that doesn't even mean like, oh, okay, well now the Pacers aren't going to win the series. No, that's not it. It's like betting is about betting the number and the matchup. And, I think you can do it other ways. You can, like, I'll be on Pacers game 1. I'll be betting Pacers if you have an edge that you feel confident in, which we're going to get into why we feel confident, you should be attacking it lots of ways so that it can pay off for you before the edge is gone. So I think attacking Pacers in the series right away in game 1, as often as you can till Giannis is back. Spoiler alert, that's the cap here. You want to just keep doing that. So I think you just keep going at it while you can. Getting them on the road where they have to give the Bucks some credit as the home team early in the series, that still is a good way to go too. And I think too, if the Bucks win one of the first 2 games and then there starts to be some rumblings of, okay, is Giannis going to be back for game 3 or that sort of thing, we'll get there. Let's not do that yet. But then would you come back and then would you bet the Pacers? Because they're going to be a much better number then than you're getting right now. So to me, that's how I think about it. Right now, it still is very bettable to me.
I think a good way to kind of put this, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts that talk about things in these terms, and I think it's important, is, look, you can play this off of, we talk about, are you playing the number? Are you playing the spot? Are you playing the game? And the same stuff kind of applies when we're talking about series. And one of the things that Brandon and I are in alignment on is this is a directional play. This is not like, oh, we really we like the number because it's like, oh, you're getting the Pacers as dogs, when we don't think that like that number is going to get you good value on it, because we genuinely think, like, okay, here's a good question.
Okay.
Give me a series price. What do you think this, if you capped it, if you were like, if you had the money to have a book and you were going to, like, you were tasked, like a bookmaker was like, I want you to set this line. What are you putting the series line at? Just straight win-loss.
Assuming what we assume right now with the Giannis injury unknown.
Yes.
I think I mean, my book lines are always going to be way off because you know
Yeah,
me.
that's okay.
I do
That's
my
why I'm
own
asking,
thing.
because I think it's interesting to hear your like. That's why I'm asking
Yeah.
you.
Well, yeah. So I think that the Pacers should be favored. I think that my assumption right now is that Giannis misses at least the first 2 games. So I'm building that into
Mhm.
my cap here.
Yeah, we'll
And
get
that
there.
those are the 2 home games is very important here. And so I think that I would probably have the Pacers something like minus 150 to minus 175. I think that they should be the favorite in the series based on the Giannis injury and how bad the Bucks have played without him.
I would have it minus somewhere between minus 125 and minus 130 Pacers.
Yeah,
So that's like,
and which is effectively probably what I'm saying. And my line is like, yeah, but I don't really want any Pacers money. I would
yeah,
rather let people have a little extra juice to give me their Bucks money, and I'm
yeah.
gonna take my stand here because I believe what I believe. And Matt, you know, when I believe something, I'm believing hard.
Yeah, and you know, I was talking about this with my wife this morning when I was talking about the series. Is I was like, I think that there's got to be times when, um, you've got to be willing to be wrong. You've just got to be like, because we cover the 4-5s, and if you listen to that podcast, people like, I got a lot of really great feedback on the 4-5s podcast. They're like, that's really great analysis, and I was like, that's funny because I have no fucking clue who wins those series, just don't know. And it's very much like, I don't know, man. And we'll talk about a series very much like that in a minute when we get to Wolves Suns, but in this one, it's like, look, I've tried every single way. I can't get to a spot where I would want to bet Bucks here. I cannot find one where I want to bet Bucks. We'll talk about the Giannis thing real quick. All right, so Giannis, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN reported on. We're recording this on Tuesday around midday Eastern. Woj reported on Tuesday morning, quote, the Milwaukee Bucks are preparing to be without two-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo for the start of their opening round series against the Pacers, but are hopeful treatment on his left calf strain will allow him to return sometime later in the series. Okay. 2 games, as you mentioned, I think is the good cap here. Is like he misses the games in Milwaukee, they get him back for game 3. What it might be is like it depends on if they're down or up. If they are 2-0, you probably give him game 3 off and let him come back in game 4 because you can drop the first one in Indiana, and then you can have a chance to go up 3-1. If it's 1-1, you might be able to get to game 4 here. If it's 0-2, if the Pacers win both in Milwaukee, which would obviously flip all of the series on its head in terms of the prices, then Giannis has to come back game 3. You got to rush him back because otherwise the season's going to be over. It's dangerous. Calf strains can lead to problems in other parts of the body, as we've talked about on the show. Like I have worries about his Achilles, etc. I don't want them to KD this. But he is going to be gone, which honestly, Brandon, as we start to do the cap, I'm a little annoyed at it because if he was in this series, we could get such a better price. Like most of the money coming in on Indiana is Giannis being out. And I'm like, I want the Pacers anyway.
Yeah, I was going to get there. I wanted to make sure that we got to the spot where, yeah, you and I wanted this matchup and this series with Giannis playing and wanted the Pacers there. Like, I'm upset that we don't get to have the great with Giannis prices because I still would have taken the Pacers with a healthy Giannis. I would have taken Indiana to win the series, and I was still done the escalator. Not as far. I would not have gone to a sweep on that one. I would have gone a little bit less on the side of the escalator there. But so here's the reason for Giannis, because I had a section on him in my notes here. So for this specific matchup, like, look, Giannis is awesome. Giannis is a perennial top 5 MVP on ballots. He's going to keep being that as long as he is healthy and in prime. Nobody needs to hear that. Like, you know that. But for this specific matchup, holy crap, is he the MVP? Like, if Giannis just played the Pacers for 82 games, we would have stopped talking about MVP. No, we always will talk about MVP, but it would have been over by like Christmas. Here's the numbers. The Pacers are dead last in the NBA in points allowed in the paint. 58.4 points a game. Guess where Giannis lives? In the paint. He just dunks all game long in the season series when they played 5 times. Giannis scored 42 points a game against the Pacers on 68% from the field. He averaged 17 and a half free throws a game. Here's some of his lines. He had a 30-point triple-double. He nearly had another one. He had a 37-10 game. He scored 54, and he scored 64. Dude doesn't shoot threes, and he dropped 64 on the Pacers because they shoot in that game like every 4 seconds, and he dunked all game long. So when he's out, that's a big deal. Like the spread and all the numbers should have moved this much. We'll get into the matchup stuff in a little bit, but when you look back at all the numbers outside of Giannis, you don't really feel Dame's impact on those 5 games against the Pacers. Brook Lopez, 20 rebounds in 5 games. Some ghastly lines in those series. Did not go well. Not a lot of depth on this team. The Bucks haven't been good even with Giannis until this final stretch. Here's the numbers with Doc. 17 and 19 since Doc took over. They've dropped from number 2 on offense to 18th on offense. They dropped from top 3 EFG and free throw rate to 13th on both of those. So you heard Matt, you do the MVP thing a lot all year long. You heard from Bucks fans all year how awesome Giannis was. The historic line, because we like cherry picked a couple numbers, hooray. And like he's had this great season. I think Giannis has actually played like the thing Bucks fans have said for the last like 6 weeks. He's gotten better down the stretch and had to play like an MVP. And when I think that about someone, I want to pick against them in the playoffs because that means you had to do too much because your team sucks. And the Bucks team sucks. And Giannis was the one reason they could have hung in this series. For that reason, my conclusion here is this. You want the escalator on this series because you want it as a Pacers better to go fast. The longer the series goes, the more Giannis we get. The more Giannis we get, the better the Bucks' chances are to actually come back and do something here if the cap is right. So that's why I like the escalator and not just the Pacers bet. You want to bet it aggressively early because if I'm wrong, if the Bucks win the first 2 games and hang around and whatever, my bet's going to go very poorly anyways because now Giannis is going to finish the job off.
So that's interesting. Let me ask you about that for a second. Do you feel like is it worth actually chopping off the middle of the bell curve here? Is it worth? Is there?
So my initial bet on this, and the line move would have probably chopped this off anyway.
Yeah.
But I initially, when I was on Green Dot Daily on Monday, our live show, and I gave this bet out, and I started my escalator as Pacers plus 1.5, which at the time was like the basic series line. Pacers plus 1.5. They're the underdog seed, so that's how it'd go. As I thought about it, I would not play that leg now. Pacers plus 1.5 means that they could push the series. I always forget how to translate this. That means get to 6 and not lose in 7, right?
Yep.
I don't think that's a good bet. I don't think that is the way to go here. So I do think actually the thing I do where I like cut out part of the way I can win a bet to try to win more money, I do think that's the way to go here because I don't think you want to bet on the Pacers winning a long series. I think if you like the Pacers, if you like the reason they're talking about because we like them anyway, but we love them with Giannis out, I think you have to bet, especially now that the line moved, more aggressively for it to go fast. And that's why I want the game ones and I want to go at it early.
Okay. That's interesting. I think from the perspective of, maybe the best way to play it is just be like, hey, Pacers minus 1.5, Pacers minus 2.5. And that might honestly just be like the best way to play.
Yeah. Maybe it's chop off just the straight series bet also in my case.
Chop off the straight series bet too. Don't take it plus 1.5. Don't take it. It's only minus 1. Like they either win in 6 or win in 5. And that to me is like, and if they sweep, and that includes the sweep price in there as well. Now I am more confident than you are because for me, a lot of this is like, you're absolutely right about the Giannis factor. And like, I don't want to discount Giannis. I think Giannis has been amazing. Like you were talking about the cherry picking. To me, 30 points on 60% shooting is actually like, that's a meaningful number. I'm like, that's an incredible number.
Okay, fair.
Like scoring 30 a game on 60% shooting is awesome. My problem is just there is no amount of offensive production that Giannis brings to this table where I'm like, and this tilts it towards the Bucks. If this is an offensive series, they're losing. Period. End dot.
Yep.
Like, I'm sorry that this is the case, and everyone's going to be like, well, but the Bucks have playoff pedigree. Yes. Also, have you listened to this show? Because I've talked for fucking years about how the Bucks offense underperforms, particularly with shooting in the playoffs. You know who doesn't underperform offensively? Is the Indiana Pacers. Like, that is the number 2 offense in the NBA, and the offensive numbers are staggering. Here's a good sense of how much, if this is an offensive series, it tilts towards the Pacers. Now, this is it's interesting, okay? The Pacers have a better record versus top 10 offenses than the Bucks do, okay? The Pacers are 15-10 versus top 10 offenses with a number 4 offense, 17th defense. The advanced metrics are better for Milwaukee, but their overall record is worse. They are 14-12 versus top 10 offenses, but they have the 3rd best offense compared to the 4th best for Indiana, and the 10th best defense compared to the 17th best for Indiana. So from that, I can understand someone being like, well, hang on, Matt. Like, you're always talking about point differentials more important than record. If the advanced metrics give Milwaukee the edge in these top 10 offensive metrics, why aren't you going Milwaukee? And here's the answer. Because Milwaukee beat the absolute shit out of Boston twice. That juiced those figures immensely. If Milwaukee makes it out of this series, my perception on them will be very different going forward. Like, how I bet them will change going forward. It doesn't mean I'm going to bet on them next series if they face the Knicks or the Sixers, but it is going to impact how I view them. This is a nightmare spot for them. How about this one? So much of this is about Damian Lillard for me, where he has looked, he just has never looked consistently like Dame. He is not the guy that Milwaukee thought they were getting when they traded for him. And we can talk about all the reasons for that, but he has not been that guy. This is a stunning number for me. All right, Pacers defense, not good. Absolutely not good. I'm not going to sit here and argue that that's good. However, you're shaking your head. I will say, when they play good teams, much better. Their defense when they play good teams is like, all right, not good, but like, you're okay. And then when they play bad teams, their defense is like, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is a stunning number for me. Defending pick and roll ball handler. I'm getting hyper narrow here, okay? If we're just talking about Damian Lillard coming off of screens and trying to score, field goal attempt, turnover, fouls drawn. The Pacers have the number 1 defense in the National Basketball Association. Think about that. They are so bad in all of the other areas defending that they are still this miserable defense, despite the top thing that most teams run, pick and roll for your ball handler, they're the best at. And you go, so they give up bunches of threes on the outside to catch and shoot guys on kickouts. You're absolutely right, because they are 27th in pick and roll defense when you include passes. Okay. That's really bad, right? Here's the thing. A lot of this is a test of whether or not the Milwaukee Bucks, much like there are several teams like this, the Sixers being, I think, a great example when we get to them, if they make the playoffs, of, do you think that they're the same team they've been, or are they different? The Milwaukee Bucks are no longer coached by Mike Budenholzer. They no longer have Drew Holiday as one of their starting 5. The roster's a little bit different, and the coaching is different. Do you believe that the Bucks are going to get over their shooting problem, where they've gotten great looks consistently since 2019 in every single playoff run and have never been good at making those shots, including the 2021 title? They still underperformed that year. I've talked about this. If you look at expected shooter shot quality, and if you base it even on who the shooter is, their numbers are always like, oh yeah, they should be elite in the playoffs. And then you look at their actual number, and it's the worst. I did the numbers last year. They have the worst over 5 years of all of these teams. They shoot the worst versus expectation. You know what that means? That means that the Pacers are going to leave them open because of their bad pick and roll defense on helping too much on shooters. And the question is, are the Bucks actually going to make those shots? And historically, they have not. If you think that's a coach problem, that's a reason to bet the Bucks. If you think it's a personnel and a core team identity, like I do, it's a reason to bet the Pacers. You have any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting is looking back at like what success. Obviously, the Bucks have had a lot of success in the last number of years in the playoffs, and I think that in our minds as fans and media, it's easy to remember Giannis putting up these like outlandish lines and being like, oh, like we remember the Drew alley-oop to Giannis. We remember the huge 30-point triple doubles, the 50 burger to close it out. Like remember the big things, but again, that's kind of because like they didn't have other ways to score. It had to be Giannis doing the thing because the other stuff isn't working. And if you parse it out, why did the Bucks go on the runs they did? Why did they win the series they did? It's because they played out of their minds good defense.
Yes.
Especially in the title run. They slaughtered teams defensively on that run, like historically good, better than Timberwolves regular season this year good levels of defense. That's not it anymore this year. Like, to me, not to go too far down the Doc Rivers path here, but like you bring in Doc Rivers midseason because the defense sucked for half of the year and he's supposed to be a defense guy. So how can he help fix the defense? The defensive metrics basically didn't change. Like they're basically still the same mediocre defense as they were. And oops, he broke the offense. Like, I don't really know why. I don't know the coaching X's and O's. Maybe it's just weird variance or something, but like you made the coaching change to help fix the defense and the locker room stuff. I understand, but it didn't help the defense. The offense is way worse now. Whatever is the reason, I don't know, but that's what the results are. So, and now we talk about coaching matchups since we're on it. Rick Carlisle, I still think is one of the best coaches in the NBA. And if there's going to be something to be found in the series, like, look, Doc Rivers, according to our esteemed voters, is a top 15 all-time NBA coach. He got to be included in like the big ceremony with the 75 best all-NBA players. Like Doc Rivers is like the Anthony Davis of that group to me. Like what? I don't. Whatever. Rick Carlisle is going to outcoach Doc Rivers in this series, so that is another reason to like them. I have more to say about why I like the Pacers, but do you agree with the coaching assessment on Doc and Rick?
Yeah, so I want to hit on this. I want to do best player and coaching advantage because this is basically like who's got the better coach, who's got the best player. If Giannis Antetokounmpo is not available until Giannis comes back, I think the best player in the series is Tyrese Halliburton. Do you agree?
I'm going to take it a step further. I don't need the F. Tyrese Halliburton is the best player in this series, given that Giannis is going to be coming back from a calf injury. Let's be fair.
Yep.
Giannis is the better player, but the Giannis coming back version, like I'm diminishing that a little bit. I don't think Tyrese to Dame is even in the same universe right now. Dame has not been good. He's playing like last year. Dame was awesome. I love Damian Lillard. Maybe he's just going to be the guy that hits all the shots this year, all those open shots. Maybe he'll make them all and make me and you look ridiculous here. I'd probably enjoy watching that, to be honest. Like, I love Dame. He has been not last year's guy that played in MVP. He's played like the year before when he had like the Olympic run or whatever that tournament was, and he had the injured groin and then just like didn't look good all year. That's the Dame that we have this year. By the numbers, that's it. So I don't know if he's hurt or he's just too old at this point or what, but like it's not good. He's not terrible, but like he's not even an all-star right now the way that he's playing. So Tyrese Halliburton, look, I gave you the Giannis numbers from the season series. Here's Tyrese from the season series because he was pretty freaking good too. 27 points, 5.5 rebounds, 11 assists a game. His offensive rating from the 5 games with him on the court averaged 142. 142 per 100 is pretty darn good. He had a game with a 154, and a 162 because the Bucks defense basically is begging you to take 2-pointers. They're going to take away your threes and make you beat them with twos. Guess who is the number 1 team in the NBA at 2-point percentage? It's the Pacers, and it's because of Tyrese Halliburton slicing up the defense and just serving up layups to anyone that will take them. That's what he's done in the series all season long against them. BPM against the Bucks, he was an 11.3 player this year. That's an MVP level, not like MVP ballot or MVP conversation, like where we do the top 15 thing. 11.3 is like Jokic level by that number. So
So
Halliburton has been awesome. I there are no series props up for this yet. Series leaders like Halliburton assists is going to be free money. I don't know what they'll have to price that at. Maybe we just won't get them because of the Giannis misinformation or lack of information, I guess. But yeah, Halliburton to me is clear the top player in the series.
So yes, is what you're saying. Um, so so we agree the best player in the series to start the series is Tyrese. If Giannis comes back and looks like himself, you and I would agree that Giannis is the best
Sure.
player in the series. But if he doesn't look like himself, it's very close at least, or if not leaning towards Hallie. Coaching, this is a mismatch. I am stronger on Doc than most people because we go too far where we're like Rivers sucks, and I was like, no, he wins 50 games every year. He wins 50 games every year. Didn't do it this year, but I would say that like a lot of it is, you mentioned the defensive numbers. A lot of us were like, hey, they look a lot better since the change, and it's because they started to make sense more. Griffin was trying to do things to instill different options for them because in the playoffs they'd had trouble when they ran into teams and they needed to solve different issues. I don't think the problem was like Griffin couldn't get them on board. Like that was Adrian Griffin's problem, is that he had a lot of ideas and he couldn't get the players on board. And that's why like you had early in the season Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez going to him and being like, we have to go back to drop. It's why you have Bobby Portis being like, we need a better coaching plan late in games. It's why you had Giannis saying to the media, we have to have more structure late in games offensively. Like, it is not about Adrian Griffin's X's and O's as much as it is his inability to get them to buy into these concepts. Doc did the opposite, which is like Doc did exactly what those players want, like what they're comfortable and what they feel confident in. My problem is I don't know if that's the best thing for them. And two, it's definitely not in the series. So much of the playoffs for me is about, can you present problems to the opponent and can you solve theirs? Rick Carlisle not only is better at finding and being willing to try different measures, and he's done this all season. If you look at like the Pacers, they look totally different in January from where they were in November, and in March from where they were in January. And it's not just because they've lost Benedict Mathurin to injury or some of the other problems that they've had. They have just adapted and they've run different stuff. They ran Miles Turner pick and roll over and over and over again. Team started scouting that, so they ran Hallie Siakam. Then they ran Siakam Turner. Like, they have interchangeability to take advantage of the matchups that you're going to present. I was talking to somebody who knows the Bucks very well, and he was like, I think we're going to see Brook on Pascal Siakam so that he can play drop in the pick and roll with Hallie, and then they're going to put Bobby Portis to start the series on Miles Turner. There's two things with that. One, Turner's 36% from three, which isn't deadly, but it is good enough if he gets hot. Two, Turner in the post versus Bobby's going to be barbecue chicken. And you go like, well, you'll live with that. Will you? If he's just absolutely, if he is just murdering you and you have to play Brook Lopez closer to the basket, which opens up the shooters. How about this? Jalen Smith, 42% from three this season. Obi Toppin, 40% from three this season. Pascal Siakam, 39% from three with the Pacers. Like, they have the ability to absolutely bomb on this Bucks team. Their drop coverage is built to be able to keep guys home, but the problem is they're going to have so much pressure that they can apply on the perimeter, and a lot of it's going to be like, okay, Siakam, we're going to play Turner, or we're going to play Brook on Siakam. They will set picks for Hallie at 40 feet, and they'll be like, Brook's either going to have to let Tyrese Halliburton dribble into a pull-up three, or he's going to have to play up, and that backside's wide open. So the tactical stuff bends very much, in my opinion, towards Pacers. Are there things that the Bucks can do? Yeah, they're going to have to show me it. Like, that's the thing, is if you're like, could the Bucks not win this series? No, they can. This is not a talent discrepancy. Okay? This is a matchup and tactical problem based off of how they play and what they've shown in terms of their capability to do it. And the Pacers have a lot more options here. The Bucks bench unit, miserable this season.
Yep.
Not been good. Guess who's been really good? TJ McConnell. TJ McConnell on the Bucks and the Pacers bench unit have been terrific this season, that's a huge advantage. There's just a lot of these mechanisms where I struggle with like, what's the advantage here? And like a lot of it gets into like Chris Middleton post ups versus Andrew Nemhart. Yep, sure, that's a problem. That's an issue. If Dame has a monster series, what does this look like? Bad for the Pacers. If it's Dame flips a switch and he's all of a sudden looks like Dame, then yeah, I would cap it differently. If Dame's the guy that he's been this season, that's a problem. Fouls are going to be a huge thing in this series as well. I want to mention that. Pacers are the worst team in the league at shooting foul percentage. They just give up a ton of shooting fouls. Dame is a very, very, very gifted grifter. He is awesome in that regard. If he gets a regular season whistle, that bends Bucks. If he doesn't, that bends Pacers. But I will say, when I've watched the Pacers defensively, they look better on film to me, and you can slice the numbers. They can always slice the numbers, but there are some bad defensive teams where it's like, look, if I try and slice the Rockets offense, I can't find good numbers. If I try and slice the Wizards defense, you can't find good numbers. If I slice the Pacers defense, I can be like, no, okay, like in certain situations and versus certain setups, they can actually have some success. They do have athletes, they do have quickness, and they are well coached, and those things matter to me. I will throw it back to you. What do you got?
Yeah, I had a few of those points down too. TJ McConnell has basically been unplayable in past playoffs, and the fact that he should be like a significant advantage in this series, and I agree with that, speaks to just how bad the depth is for Milwaukee. The Bucks bench got absolutely run in like 2 or 3 of the matchups in the regular season. And I want to go back to that too, just like we're harping on the matchups thing in the regular season. And I think Kevin Pelton at ESPN did a study a while back that basically says regular season matchup, who wins the regular season matchup, and the Pacers won 4-1. They had the extra game because they also knocked Milwaukee out of the in-season tournament. Whoever wins that season series in the first round is highly predictive of how the first round goes. After the first round, it is basically not predictive at all. I don't know why, but that's what the study found. But in the first round, it really matters. And guess what? We're going to come back to that in our other 3 versus 6 in just a minute. Just a minute. So other things from the season series that I noticed. Pacers weren't even really hitting their threes. They kind of shot terribly, actually, in a few of the games. That's what's a little scary, is the Pacers actually shot horribly and still destroyed the Bucks a couple times. They just got as many twos as they wanted. They had 36 one game, 38, 43. Like, that is a huge number of 2-pointers in the modern era. They also lived at the line. They get a lot of free throws. Not the Bucks. The Pacers got a lot of free throws, because guess what? Pretty good way to get free throws is shooting twos all game, shooting at the rim all game, because somebody's going to try to contest it and stop it, and that's how that goes. I mentioned about the Bucks 2-point defense. They allow the 27th most 2-point attempts per game. Now, that's by design. That's who the Bucks are. That's what they've done for years. Here's the problem. Last year, when Brook Lopez was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and Giannis, by the way, they were number 1 in 2-point percent defense. This year, they're 16th. So suddenly, they're scheming to get you to the basket, and this year, teams are finishing because that defense is not as good, and Brook Lopez's defense is not as valuable without Giannis. It goes together. Pacers are number 1 in twos, number 1 in 2-point percentage. In the 5 games they played, Indiana averaged 128.8 points a game. It's a lot of points, even in 2024. 129 a game. They scored at least 122 every single game. They scored at least 27 points in all but 1 quarter. So in 20 quarters they played, the Pacers scored at least 27 all but 1 time. I gave you the Halliburton numbers. I try to think, okay, what are the Bucks' answers? You talked about Dame. If Dame has a vintage Dame series, then we're in trouble. Yeah. I don't agree. If Dame has a vintage Dame series, I still like the Pacers. I just don't like the escalator quite as strongly. But that's how much the gap is here. Like, I still think Halliburton is as good as, maybe still better than in this series, what vintage Dame is. That's the level I'm placing him at right now in this series. So I think it closed the gap, certainly, but it doesn't quite change it. The bench is not going to be there. The Bucks threes have not been there. they only took 33 a game in this series for the season. They shot 32%, so maybe they shoot a little better, but historically, that's not what it says for Jay Crowder and Pat Connaughton and all these like washed rotation guys that just haven't been it for a couple years and are just running it back because this is what Milwaukee has done. And then last thing, so when I prep for the playoffs, I kind of do it in two big stages. I spent all last week doing like a team capsule. What do I think about the Bucks? Not about the playoff version of matchups and whatever. Just where I'm at on the Bucks right now. Didn't like it. Did not like what I saw. Didn't like the doc numbers. Didn't like where things are going. Obviously, Giannis was a question mark then. What do you think about the Pacers? Kind of like it. Kind of like that we got Siakam coming here. Kind of like Halliburton, except, wait a minute, Halliburton was great, kind of stunk for a big stretch in the middle of there. And they were doing the like playing through the injury, trying to get to 65 games for the awards, all that kind of stuff. So since March 20th, arbitrary cutoff, I know, but just like give me the last like 3 weeks, the Pacers have the number one offense in the NBA. They're third in net rating. Halliburton is not back to peak Halliburton level, but pretty darn close to it with a 130 offensive rating compared to the previous 2 months, 118. BPM, I know, my go-to, was 3.0 for 2 months, back up to almost 8 this last like 3 weeks. Halliburton's back. Halliburton is fine. He seems ready to go. I'm ready to go with the Pacers.
One more point I will say on Halliburton, because we were talking about like how does this go badly for the Pacers. That is a lot of this, and that's where I think I would say that if there's a blind spot, that to me is it. Hallie in the IST ran up against the Los Angeles Lakers in a high-intensity playoff, not level, but sub-playoff level matchup. And the physicality with which the Lakers played him took him out. He was unable to do anything because they blitzed him. And they blitzed him with long, athletic, physical defenders. So you basically just like power bombed Jay Crowder there off of a table. But that he's actually really important here because Malik Beasley is not a big physical defender. Patrick Beverley is not a big physical defender. Pat's a very good on-ball defender. He's pesky and annoying. He'll win some possessions versus Hallie. But what you really want is you want big bodies to close space on Halliburton to get him to disengage. It's a big reason why they added Pascal Siakam, which gives them another creator, right? If you're going to do that, we're going to get Siakam going downhill 4-on-3 if you're going to try and put 2 on the level. Now, the Bucks are not going to do that. They don't play at the level. That's why Adrian Griffin got fired. Is like, he wanted them to do that and was not able to convince them to do that. And that's a big reason, not the only reason. There's a lot of reasons Adrian Griffin got fired. That was part of it. So the absence of Bucks defenders that can do that. And like, I have questions about Chris Middleton and his ability to stay healthy and on the floor. However, if we're wrong, that to me is where this goes haywire, is that Hallie in his first playoff appearance gets bodied by a Bucks team that at least has that understands playoff basketball, makes him uncomfortable, cuts off the head of the snake, and the other guys aren't able to function without Halliburton as the primary engine.
Yeah, I will say this. Tyrese Halliburton, I do think that there is a serious question of can he be the guy, the number one guy on a playoff run? I'm not sure I'm there yet because of all the stuff that you just said, because I had my Hallie ticket for MVP in the in-season tournament, and then I watched it just die on the vine against the Lakers. Oh, man, that was not great because of what you just said. Like, they schemed him. They took him out. I think that a championship Pacers team has Siakam as the 3, like the number 3 guy, and Halliburton as the number 2 guy, and you still need the number 1 guy. Like, I think a championship roster has to do that. Let me put it this way. If Dame were peak Dame, would I think about this series differently? A little bit. If Dame was just Drew still, I would think about this series a lot differently. If Drew Holiday was on this roster, and I'm not saying Dame is better than Drew, but for this matchup and the ability to pressure on Halliburton, if Drew were still there, you and I sparred about point of attack defense and how much would that do with this Bucks team before the year. Oh boy, this is the matchup where they need it. I'm not sold that Crowder and Middleton are going to be the guys to give that to them. And Drew Holiday, really sucks. They're going to miss him.
Here's a deep cut. AJ Green is a huge missing thing here. Huge.
That is a deep cut.
Like, that's a huge missing thing for the Bucks here. I'm not kidding. He would be very useful in this series.
How convinced are you that I have any idea who AJ Green is or have ever seen him play?
Not high. I would not say. I may actually be getting his name wrong too. So because I think I keep being like, wait, is that a receiver? Is that who that is? Isn't there a receiver named AJ? No, it's
there
AJ
is a
Green.
receiver named
6'4".
AJ Green. But
yeah, 6'4". University of Northern Iowa, by the way.
Yeah, AJ Green, the receiver, looks very different than AJ Green, the Bucks player.
That's accurate. That is accurate. Okay, I think we've covered Pacers long enough.
Let me give you one long shot bomb to keep an eye on for later. Just a series leader prop. If Giannis comes back after game 2, or even after like going into game 3 or game 4, just keep an eye out and don't forget Giannis series points leader. Even if he misses the first couple of games, because dude's scoring like 40 plus in the series, you can close the gap in a hurry. So if we get like a really long number because he has 0 and somebody else has like 70 so far, that's just one I want to keep an eye on.